Don't move. Seriously, don't move, said Travis, gripping his arm tightly as blood streamed down his forearm in thick, steady rivulets. The gash was deep, just under 4 inches, torn through skin and at least one muscle layer. It wasn't spurting, so nothing arterial, but it wasn't shallow either. His fingers felt cold, and the pain was sharp and growing worse. Across from him, standing frozen in the middle of the xenobiology lab, was Vellin, an exchange student from the planet Joraki. His greenish skin had gone pale green, and his nictitating eyelids fluttered rapidly over his eyes. Then he dropped to the floor with a wet thud before Travis could say another word. "Aw, come on," Travis muttered through gritted teeth. He stumbled backward, knocking over a stool with his hip and catching himself on the counter. Blood dripped to the floor. He looked down at the jagged edge of the broken glass container still on the table and then over to Vellin, who lay curled on his side, twitching slightly. "Professor Renner," Travis called out. His voice cracked from the pain. "We've got a situation." The door burst open seconds later, followed by the sound of hard shoes on tile. Professor Renner, a tall, tired-looking woman with gray hair pulled back in a rush, stopped cold at the scene. She took in the blood, the glass, Travis clutching his arm, and Vellin, unconscious on the floor. "What happened?" Vellin knocked over the container while I was labeling samples. I tried catching it, but it shattered in my hand. Then he saw the blood and just dropped. Renner crouched beside Vellin, checking his pulse. "He's alive, probably triggered a neurovasovagal collapse from the sight of blood." Travis winced. "Translation," he fainted. "Hard." "I figured that much," Travis muttered, sliding down to sit on the floor. "My arm feels like it's tearing in two." Renner stood quickly. "We need to stop the bleeding. Can you apply pressure?" Yeah, I've got it," Travis said, pressing a wad of gauze from the emergency kit against the wound. His hand trembled. "But it's deep." The professor grabbed her calm. "Medical lab, we need a trauma kit and gurney in lab 2. 1 human with laceration, 1 Joraki unconscious." "Copy that. Ida 3 minutes." Travis sat back against the wall, breathing heavily. "Why would he faint like that? It's just blood." Renner glanced at him. "Joraki don't have blood in the same way we do. Their internal fluids are clear. Seeing red blood can trigger neurological panic responses. It's like a defense reflex." "Well, that's not ideal in a science lab," Travis muttered, then hissed as another wave of pain hit. "God, this stings. Don't talk. Focus on keeping pressure. Help is almost here." 2 minutes later, the door hissed open and 2 medics entered, 1 human and 1 Keltari. The human medic, a compact man with quick hands, knelt beside Travis and began assessing the wound. "Deep laceration, left forearm," he said. "Let's get him bandaged and into the med bay." "Am I gonna need stitches?" Travis asked quietly. "Yeah, probably a dozen or more. We'll numb it first." Travis nodded, jaw clenched. "Okay. Just get it closed." The Keltari medic lifted Vellin onto a gurney with one smooth motion. "Unconscious but stable, no convulsions, no cardiac irregularities. Take him to Recovery Bay 3. Quarantine conditions," Renner added. "Quarantine?" Travis asked, alarmed. "Standard procedure with alien species after neurological shock. Don't worry, it's not contagious, just protocol." Travis was lifted onto the second gurney, his arm now wrapped tightly with gauze and a temporary pressure brace. The pain was still sharp, but he could move his fingers again. As they wheeled him out, he turned his head, catching one last glimpse of Vellin's still form. "He's gonna be okay, right?" "Should be," the medic replied. "Just needs time." Travis exhaled slowly and let his head fall back against the gurney. "Next time," he muttered, "we use plastic containers." 4 hours later, Travis sat upright on a narrow cot in the med bay, his left arm freshly stitched and wrapped in a soft polymer bandage that looked like gauze but flexed like skin. The pain had subsided to a dull throb, manageable with the help of 1 mild analgesic patch. A nurse had offered a second, but he'd refused, not because he wanted to act tough, but because the first one already made his thoughts feel like they were sloshing around in a jar of syrup. A sterile curtain divided his section from the rest of the bay. Monitors blinked quietly on the wall beside him, tracking vitals with soft beeps that pulsed like a slow heartbeat. The air smelled faintly of antiseptic, with a trace of something metallic hiding underneath. He couldn't tell if that was from the instruments or just the memory of his own blood. Footsteps approached. Not hurried, not heavy, but deliberate. The curtain swayed slightly as it was pulled aside. "You are conscious," said a voice, light and unsteady. Travis looked up. Vellin stood at the edge of the cubicle, his posture slightly slouched, hands folded tightly in front of him. His skin was still a bit pale, more mint than the usual sea glass green, and his eyes darted once to the bandaged arm before snapping back to meet Travis's gaze. "I'm awake, yeah," Travis said. "You good to stand?" Vellin blinked twice. "They said I collapsed. I have no memory of that occurring, only," he paused, a sensation of overwhelming alarm, and then absence. Travis shifted, wincing slightly. "Yeah, you went down the second you saw the cut." "Like a switch." "I did not intend to do that," Vellin said, voice flat, but something in the way his fingers curled inward gave him away. "I was not aware that human injuries would contain such vivid coloration." "Blood?" Travis asked, raising an eyebrow. "It's not always that dramatic, I swear." "This was just a bad one." Vellin's throat worked through a swallow. "I had assumed your internal fluids were more muted." Travis gave a tired laugh. "Nope, bright red. Pumps out like someone opened a spigot if you're not careful." Vellin's eyes widened slightly, but he didn't look away this time. "Your response was measured. You did not vocalize distress." "I was vocalizing distress," Travis said. "You just missed it on account of being unconscious." Vellin tilted his head. "Humans are not equipped with hemoflux sensors. How did you assess the severity of the wound?" Travis hesitated. "You mean?" "How did I know it wasn't life-threatening?" "Yes." "Well, I looked at how much it bled, sure, but mostly I checked for pulsing and whether I could move my fingers. You pick that up in basic first aid." Vellin blinked again, slower this time. "You are not a medical professional." "No," Travis said. "Just a student who's cut himself before." Vellin looked genuinely startled by that. "This is not your first injury of this magnitude?" Travis scratched his cheek with his good hand. "Not this deep, but I've had a few close calls." "You grow up with siblings and a backyard full of rusted metal and questionable trees, you learn." Vellin took a careful step closer. "You tended to the laceration yourself, without a guide." "There was a first aid kit right there," Travis said. "Grabbed gauze, wrapped it, kept pressure." "Basic stuff." The Joraki stared at him for a moment, then sat cautiously on the edge of the adjacent chair. "I do not understand how you endured it. The depth your epidermis was visibly breached." "Yeah," Travis said. "It hurt, still does." Vellin shifted again. "Your face did not reflect extreme discomfort." "Because I was trying not to pass out," Travis said. "And because I didn't think it would help to scream." Vellin was quiet for a moment, antennae barely visible under the subtle ridges of his scalp twitching slightly. "I have reviewed the security footage. You reached for the container even as it fell," Travis sighed. "Yeah, dumb move, reflex. Reflexes prioritize self-preservation, yours did not," Travis shrugged. "I guess I was trying to stop a mess." Vellin leaned forward slightly. "That is not a logical calculation." "Neither is fainting at the sight of blood," Travis said without malice. Vellin's mouth opened, then closed. "That is accurate." They sat in silence for a few seconds, the steady beep of the monitor the only sound. "I have never observed a being react to injury in that manner," Vellin said at last. Travis looked at him. "You mean staying conscious?" "I mean acting to contain the damage, downplaying pain, and attempting to reassure others despite personal distress." Travis frowned. "Well, what else was I supposed to do? Panic?" Vellin considered that. "Yes," Travis blinked. "Seriously, in Joraki culture, visible pain elicits immediate collective intervention. Individuals are encouraged to amplify distress signals so that others may respond swiftly." "That explains the fainting," Travis said. "No," Vellin replied. That explains why I was not conditioned to expect you to remain functional. The fainting was involuntary. Travis laughed, then winced and held his arm. Okay, don't make me laugh, it pulls on the stitches. Vellin stood. I have caused you harm. Travis leaned back against his pillow. What, by knocking over a container? That's not harm, that's clumsiness. Big difference? Vellin seemed to wrestle with that. If our roles had been reversed, I do not believe I would have remained conscious, let alone mobile. Travis didn't reply right away. He looked at the ceiling, then back at Vellin. You probably would have done something I couldn't, though, he said. Maybe stabilized chemical components faster or identified contaminant thresholds. Vellin tilted his head. That is likely. Then maybe we're just wired different, Travis said. Not better or worse, just different priorities under stress. Vellin's gaze dropped to the floor. I have requested to review human emergency response protocols. Privately, Travis grinned despite himself. So next time I start bleeding, you won't hit the floor. I cannot guarantee that, Vellin said. However, I do not wish to be incapacitated again. Fair enough, Travis said. Next time, maybe we both just step back and let the container fall. Vellin paused. That would be wasteful. Yeah, Travis said, but safer. They sat in silence again. Vellin stood to leave but hesitated. Your endurance has challenged several assumptions. Travis looked tired again. That's what school's for, right? Without a word, Vellin nodded once and turned to leave, his steps more stable than when he'd arrived. The curtain swayed back into place behind him. Travis closed his eyes. The pain was back, but it felt lighter now, not because it hurt less, but because it wasn't all that had happened today. 6 hours later, after the medbay's lights dimmed to their nighttime levels, and most of the other patients had either left or entered sleep cycles, Travis sat upright again, this time with his legs dangling over the side of the cot. His arm was stiff from the wrap, and the pain had deepened into an annoying ache that made his fingers tingle if he shifted too much. He wasn't supposed to be up yet, but he couldn't sleep. Not with the faint sound of footsteps pacing just beyond the curtain. He cleared his throat. You gonna wear a trench in the floor? The pacing stopped. A moment passed. Then the curtain drew back a few inches. I was not aware I was being disruptive, Vellin said. You weren't, Travis replied. But if I can hear you, it means you're thinking too loud. Vellin hesitated in the doorway, shifting his weight from one foot to the other. I requested to remain nearby. The staff permitted it under observation terms. Travis raised an eyebrow. You're still under observation? Yes. They wish to determine whether my response earlier was an isolated episode or part of a broader physiological pattern. You mean they want to see if you'll faint again? Travis said. Vellin didn't answer immediately. That is one possibility. Travis motioned to the chair beside him with his uninjured hand. You might as well sit. I'm not going anywhere. Vellin stepped inside and lowered himself into the seat, posture rigid. He clasped his hands in his lap, eyes fixed on the floor. I have reviewed over 50 visual logs of human trauma incidents since returning to consciousness, he said without looking up. Travis blinked. Why would you do that to yourself? I believed exposure might reduce my involuntary reactions. And did it help? It did not, Vellin admitted. On the third recording, I experienced ocular constriction and nausea. I terminated the session. Probably for the best, Travis said. That's not how we build tolerance either. Vellin nodded once. I do not understand how you maintained clarity during your injury. The footage shows you moving with purpose. Your pupils did not dilate excessively. Your respiration was elevated but not erratic. I wasn't calm, Travis said. I was trying not to make things worse. But you did not enter a panic state. I've been in worse situations, Travis said quietly. You learn to prioritize. Vellin finally looked at him. What is the threshold for panic in humans? Travis tilted his head. You mean when do we lose it? Yes, depends. Some people lose it at a loud noise. Some don't even flinch when things explode. He scratched the back of his neck. But we do panic. We're not immune. Vellin frowned. Then why did you not? Because I thought you were going to need help, Travis said, and I figured staying upright was better than both of us being on the floor. Vellin's expression didn't change, but his fingers tightened around each other. I have never been rendered helpless by another's condition before, he said. It was humiliating. You passed out, Travis said. That's not the same as running away. I offered nothing. I simply ceased functioning. You didn't choose to shut down, Travis said. That's not something to feel bad about. Vellin stared at him. Your species has a very non-confrontational view of failure. Travis let out a breath. We've had a lot of practice messing things up. Vellin tilted his head. If I had not fallen, would you still have treated the wound yourself? Yes. Even knowing it would cause you pain. There wasn't anyone else there, Travis said. What was I supposed to do? Wait. You could have waited for a medic and risk bleeding more. No thanks. Vellin was quiet for a moment. You chose the option with the greatest discomfort to minimize potential complications. Something like that. That is not a typical Joraki calculation, Travis shrugged. Maybe not. But we don't always go with what's comfortable. Vellin leaned forward slightly. Does that not result in damage? Sometimes, Travis said, but it also gets things done. Vellin looked down again. I have not encountered this logic before. Travis tilted his head. How do Joraki handle injuries? They do not handle them alone. Medical personnel are summoned immediately. Individuals are instructed to remain still and vocalize the extent of their injury until assistance arrives. Sounds structured. It is. There is no expectation of self-treatment. Travis nodded slowly. Well, now I get why you were so surprised. Vellin's eyes flicked up again, and he seemed to study Travis's face as if trying to decode something. Were you afraid you might lose consciousness? Yeah, Travis said. I was. But I figured I had a few minutes before that happened. You calculated your own operating window, I guessed, based on how dizzy I felt and how much blood I thought I'd lost. That is an extraordinary level of familiarity with personal limits. Travis gave a tired smile. I've had practice. Vellin didn't respond for several seconds. Then he stood and walked to the small table in the corner where a pitcher of water sat beside 2 cups. He poured one and brought it back to Travis. You should remain hydrated, he said, offering it carefully. Travis took it with his good hand. Thanks. Vellin sat again. Human behavior under duress is inconsistent. Travis drank, then set the cup down. You're not wrong. I am attempting to form a working model, but your responses deviate from expected patterns. Travis leaned back against the wall. You're trying to turn people into equations. We don't really fit. That is becoming apparent. Vellin's gaze drifted to the bandage. Do you feel less functional now? Physically, a little, mentally, I'm fine. You speak casually of your own impairment. Travis looked at him. Because it's temporary. That perspective is not common on Jorak. Maybe it's not about the injury, Travis said. Maybe it's about knowing it'll heal. Vellin looked thoughtful. That concept is unfamiliar. Yeah, well, Travis said, shifting slightly. You ever break a bone? No, our internal structure is more flexible. Fractures are rare. Then maybe you've never had to wait out pain. Vellin was quiet again. You endured the pain alone. I didn't have much choice. You had me, Vellin said softly. Travis blinked. You were unconscious, but I should not have been. Travis shook his head. You can't fix that by feeling guilty. I am not accustomed to helplessness. Well, Travis said, first time for everything. Vellin didn't respond. He stood slowly. I will return in 1 hour. If your condition worsens, I will notify the staff. Travis raised an eyebrow. You're setting a timer on yourself now. I am attempting to measure tolerances. Yours or mine? Both, Vellin said. Then he turned and stepped out through the curtain. Alone again, Travis let out a breath and lay back. His arm throbbed in time with the monitor's beeping, and his eyes drifted shut not from comfort, but from the weight of the day finally catching up. 2 days after the incident in Lab 2, Travis returned to the shared xenobiology seminar room, his left arm still wrapped, but no longer throbbing. The bandage had been changed that morning, and though the stitches pulled slightly when he flexed, The worst was behind him. His seat's second row left side was unoccupied, and the space still smelled faintly of the sterilizing mist they used after cross-species activity. Vellin was already there. He stood at one of the lab's side counters, his hands carefully arranging several transparent cylinders into a grid. He didn't look up immediately, but his antennae shifted slightly as Travis entered. "You're early," Travis said, sliding into his chair. "I recalibrated my schedule to avoid crowding," Vellin replied, eyes still on the containers. "That a polite way of saying you didn't want to bump into anyone, not precisely." "I wish to prepare without interruption." Travis nodded, watching as Vellin aligned the last cylinder with intense focus. The glass-like vessels shimmered faintly, embedded with microscopic thermocells. Each held a different type of nutrient gel designed for comparative analysis. "Not a drop of red in sight. Does it bother you to be back here?" Travis asked. Vellin paused, then turned slightly. "No, the environment is no longer associated with the event." "Lucky you, I still see the broken glass every time I look at that corner," Travis said, pointing vaguely. "I have mentally reclassified the incident as a data point," Vellin said, "experiential rather than emotional." "Yeah, I'm still working on that," Travis muttered. Vellin approached the table, standing just opposite. "How is your arm?" "Still attached," Travis said. "Healing slow, but healing." "I reviewed human dermal regeneration rates. This timeline is within standard deviation. You say that like I'm a lab rat. I am attempting to speak in familiar biological terms." "Well," Travis said, leaning back, "maybe tone down the standard deviation talk. Makes it hard to feel like a person." Vellin hesitated, then nodded. Acknowledged. Travis studied him for a moment. "You always talk like that, all clinical." "No," Vellin said. "Only when unsure of emotional context. You unsure now?" "Yes." "Why?" Vellin opened his mouth, closed it, then tried again. "Because I do not know if you expect me to apologize." Travis blinked. "For what?" "For collapsing, for failing to assist. For creating additional distress." Travis shook his head. "You didn't set out to do any of that. Intent does not negate consequence." "No," Travis said, "but it changes what comes next." Vellin looked at him directly. "What does come next?" Travis shrugged. "Depends." "You planning to faint again?" Vellin didn't flinch. "No." "Then next is just you being a little less surprised by us." "I have already adjusted several classifications in my personal schema." "Like what?" Vellin considered. "Human responses to bodily trauma are now categorized as highly variable with significant tolerance thresholds under acute conditions." "That's a mouthful," Travis said. "But I think I get it. I also removed the assumption that external calmness equates to internal stability." Travis raised an eyebrow. "That one sounds like it was hard to let go." "It was," Vellin said. "Your behavior did not conform to any known models I had studied. I'm not trying to be unpredictable. I just didn't want to bleed all over the floor." Vellin tilted his head. "That still does not explain the lack of vocal distress. Or your ability to move with coordination during visible trauma." "I didn't know I was supposed to do anything else," Travis said. "It wasn't a choice, it was just what needed doing." "That is difficult for me to integrate," Vellin admitted. "Why?" "Because my instincts would have dictated immobility, silence, deference to nearby authority. Even if no one else was around, there would be protocols," Vellin said. "Sometimes you don't have time for protocol," Travis replied. Vellin tapped 2 fingers lightly along the edge of the table. "That is a concept I am still internalizing." A moment passed. Both students looked toward the far end of the lab where a tray of sealed sample tubes hummed quietly in a preservation field. "You ever had to improvise before?" Travis asked. "Not in biological situations," Vellin said. "I have done so under mechanical duress, such as when a gravity stabilizer failed during transit." Travis tilted his head. "And how'd you handle that?" "I rerouted power through auxiliary coils using manual override." "That's improvising, but there was no physical threat to my body." "Still counts," Travis said. So maybe you're not as rigid as you think. Vellin looked at him, thoughtful. Perhaps not. They fell quiet again. A faint tapping sound came from the ceiling vent, some distant calibration of the airflow system. It filled the silence without pressing on it. Finally, Vellin spoke. I have been analyzing the difference between reaction and response. Travis looked up. You mean like reflex versus choice? Yes, I reacted involuntarily, you responded deliberately. They're not always separate, Travis said. Sometimes you choose faster than you realize. That seems paradoxical. Welcome to being human. Vellin didn't laugh, but his shoulders eased slightly. I would like to observe more of these response behaviors. If that is acceptable, you want to watch people get hurt. No, Vellin said quickly. I want to understand the decision-making processes during stress. Not the injuries themselves. That's a weird hobby. It is a focused curiosity. I'll take your word for it, Travis said. Just don't hover with a clipboard next time someone stubs their toe. I will refrain. A soft chime sounded from the wall panel. Class would begin in 10 minutes. Other students were starting to drift in, their voices low and indistinct. Someone dropped a pen, it clattered and rolled across the floor. Vellin straightened. I have restructured today's analysis module to avoid physical samples. Good. I don't think either of us needs a sequel. Vellin inclined his head. Agreed. As he turned to return to his station, Travis called after him. Hey, Vellin paused. You held it together today. Vellin glanced back. There was no blood, still. Progress? Vellin offered no verbal reply, but his antennae tilted forward slightly, a subtle gesture Travis had come to read as acknowledgement. As the room filled with quiet motion and the lights shifted to focus mode, Travis realized something peculiar. For all the confusion and discomfort the last 2 days had brought, he didn't regret reaching for that falling container, not because it made him look brave, but because it had revealed a kind of strength he hadn't known someone else was capable of finding, not in a moment of action, but in the effort to understand what it meant. And maybe, just maybe, that mattered more. The next afternoon, exactly 15 hours after the incident, Travis found himself standing in front of the hazardous materials disposal chute, holding a sealed container of expired protein cultures in one hand and a growing sense of unease in the other. The lab was quieter than usual, most students attending a seminar across the hall. He'd opted out, citing his still healing arm and the fact that sitting in a tight row of chairs while his stitches pinched didn't seem like a good time. Vellin was there too, standing a few meters away at a side station, disassembling a nutrient centrifuge with surgical focus. He hadn't spoken since they entered the room together, though he'd nodded once when Travis walked in. That alone was progress. Small but measurable. Travis triggered the chute, watching as the container vanished through the decontamination field with a low hiss. When he turned, Vellin was watching him not in alarm, but with an intensity that bordered on forensic. You are favoring your right side, Vellin said. That obvious? You adjust your posture to reduce torque on your left arm. Your gait compensates as well. Yeah, it's stiff, Travis admitted. Better than yesterday, though. Vellin took a step closer. Are the internal tissues regenerating according to expected biological parameters? I'm not leaking, if that's what you mean. That is not what I meant, Travis pulled in a breath. It's healing, slower than I'd like. I can't lift anything heavy and the bandage itches like hell. Vellin tilted his head. Itching is a sign of tissue repair, yes. That's what the nurse said. There was a pause. Then Vellin gestured toward the stool beside him. Would you be willing to assist with a calibration? It only requires verbal confirmation of indicator changes. Travis raised an eyebrow. You trust me near your equipment again? I am aware you are not likely to knock anything over one-handed. Travis chuckled and crossed the room, settling onto the stool. What am I looking for? Vellin tapped a control panel. The central readout will cycle through light spectrums. Inform me when you see the third fluctuation in the blue range. As the device began its slow rotation through hues, Travis kept his eyes on the display. A soft hum filled the air, steady and precise. After a moment he spoke. "There it is, third blue spike." "Confirmed," Vellin said, inputting the data. "Thank you, no problem." Travis leaned back slightly, careful not to stretch too far. "So, did they clear you for lab work?" "I was granted conditional clearance this morning." "Conditional? I am to avoid exposure to human biological matter until further notice." "Probably for the best," Travis said. Then he frowned. "Wait, does that include skin contact?" Vellin blinked. "I did not inquire." Travis rubbed his chin. "Might want to. Would be awkward if I high-fived you and you hit the floor again." "I do not believe that level of contact would provoke collapse. You didn't think blood would either." Vellin's mouth opened slightly, then closed. "Point conceded." Another pause settled between them, filled only by the low whir of the centrifuge winding down. Travis drummed his fingers on his knee, then stopped as a twinge ran up his arm. "Do you remember anything from when you passed out?" "I recall the sensation of my respiratory system attempting to reverse itself." Travis blinked. "What?" "My body attempted to exhale and constrict simultaneously. It created a feedback loop, then everything ceased." "That's horrifying." "It was brief." Travis studied him. "You ever had that happen before?" "No, nor have I witnessed it in others." "So I'm your first blood-induced shutdown?" "Yes." "Well, glad I could be memorable." Vellin didn't respond immediately. "Then, it is not a memory I find pleasant." "Didn't mean it like that." "I know." Travis stood slowly, stretching his legs. "You know, I didn't exactly enjoy the whole slicing my arm open part either." "I did not assume you did. Still, it's weird how fast everything shifted. 1 second I'm labeling samples, next I'm bleeding all over the table and watching you drop like a plank." Vellin's shoulders stiffened. "I failed to maintain operational awareness. You fainted." "That's not a system's failure, it's a body doing what it does." "I should have recognized the trigger signs sooner." Travis gave him a long look. "You ever seen real trauma before?" "Only in simulations." "Then how were you supposed to know how you'd react?" Vellin's hands curled slightly. "Joraki education emphasizes control. Deviation from expected behavior is considered a flaw in conditioning." "Sounds exhausting." "It is efficient." "Not the same thing." They both fell silent again. Vellin adjusted a dial on the centrifuge. Travis watched him for a moment. "You know," he said, "for what it's worth, I didn't think less of you." Vellin didn't look up. "You should have." "Why?" "Because I contributed nothing when it counted." "You think staying conscious is the only way to help?" "In that context, yes." Travis folded his arms carefully. "Look, if you'd panicked and made things worse, that'd be one thing, but you didn't. You went down and then you got up again. That's what matters." Vellin turned, finally meeting his gaze. "You are dismissing the severity of the event." "No, I'm just not holding it against you." Vellin's expression shifted, not quite readable. Then he reached for a data pad and tapped twice. "There is a training module for cross-species medical response. It includes distress pattern recognition." "Thinking of enrolling?" "I already have." Travis blinked. "Seriously?" "I do not wish to be unprepared again." Travis scratched his eyebrow. "Well, all right. That's actually kind of cool." "I considered requesting a human partner for the simulations." Travis raised an eyebrow. "You volunteering me?" "I am asking if you would be willing." Travis considered it. "Depends. Will there be more glass shards involved?" "No," Vellin said. "Only holographic injuries?" "Then yeah, sure, but I'm not pretending to faint if you cut your finger." "That will not be necessary." Travis grinned. "Deal." Vellin lowered the data pad. "I will inform the registrar." "Do they need a doctor's note for my arm?" "No." "Participation requires only verbal consent." "Then count me in." The centrifuge beeped once, signaling end of cycle. Vellin moved to collect the samples, more relaxed now. As Travis turned to leave, he paused at the doorway. "Hey, Vellin." "Yes. Next time we're in a crisis, try to stay standing. I don't think I've got another one of those catches in me." Vellin nodded once. "I will remain vertical." With that, Travis walked out, the door hissing shut behind him. His arm still ached, but it felt lighter somehow, like something else had begun to heal too. Exactly 9 days after the incident in Lab 2, Travis was cleared for full use of his arm. The stitches were removed that morning 12, right down the middle of the forearm, and the medtech had declared the healing rate uncomplicated, if stubborn. The scar would be visible for a while, but it no longer hurt unless he pressed on it, which, naturally, he had tested within minutes of being told not to. He stood in the observation wing now, not in the lab, but just off the main corridor that overlooked the indoor botanical dome. The place was quiet at this hour, with most students either in evening sessions or already off campus for the 3-day break. The dome's soft lighting made everything look a little unreal, like a museum exhibit of a forest caught mid-breath. "There you are," said Vellin, stepping beside him. "I thought you'd gone back to your dorm," Travis said, not looking away from the view. "I was informed your clearance was finalized today. You did not answer your comm. Didn't have it with me during the checkup." Vellin nodded once. "I wish to verify your condition in person. You can just ask how I am, less formal." Vellin folded his hands behind his back. "How are you then?" "Fine. Still weird to see the skin there all crinkled, but it's holding together. No more dressing, no more restrictions. No discomfort, only when I forget it's there and lean on the edge of a desk wrong." Vellin glanced at him. "You appear to be in good spirits. Because I am." They stood in silence for a moment, watching artificial mist roll over the tops of the dome's trees. "You know," Travis said, "I've been thinking about that day a lot." Vellin looked toward him but didn't speak. "I keep coming back to the part where everything just paused," Travis said. "Right after the glass broke, before anything else happened, felt like time slowed down." "I experienced no such sensation," Vellin replied. "My perception collapsed entirely." "Yeah, I remember. But for me, it was like this hyper-clear moment. I saw the container fall, I even saw the light bend through it like a prism, and then I moved without thinking. Not heroic or anything, just reactive. You have not described that aspect before." "I didn't know how to. It wasn't dramatic. It just felt like the only option." Vellin tilted his head. "You were not aware of risk. I was, I just didn't care in the moment. That is not a concept I understand easily." "I know," Travis said, "but maybe you don't need to. Just knowing it happens might be enough." Vellin turned his gaze back to the dome. "I have reviewed numerous human behavioral logs since then. You mentioned that before. This time, I focused on situations where no assistance was guaranteed. Environments where the individual could not rely on others." Travis raised an eyebrow. "That's pretty specific. I wanted to understand what compels humans to act without support, and what you find, that outcomes are inconsistent. But the impulse to act often precedes the evaluation of consequences." "Yeah," Travis said, "we tend to leap before we look. It is a trait that appears reckless, yet often results in favorable survival outcomes. Sometimes. Other times it just gets you a scar and a tetanus booster." Vellin considered that. "I have come to see your response as more than reflex. It was a cultural extension of trust in one's own resilience." Travis glanced at him. "That's supposed to be a compliment? It is an observation. But I do acknowledge the value of such traits now. I'll take it." They lingered in the observation wing for another minute, neither speaking. A pair of maintenance drones floated past beneath them, scanning plant growth with quiet efficiency. "Are you still doing those simulation modules?" Travis asked. "No," Vellin said. "I completed the final stage yesterday. Already, I condensed the schedule. Why? I wish to confront the biological triggers while they remained fresh. Did it work?" "Yes. I no longer experience involuntary symptoms when shown human physiology simulations." Travis laughed. "So now you can watch someone get patched up and keep your feet under you?" "I believe so." "Good," Travis said. "Because I'm not planning on bleeding again, but if I do, I'd prefer not to be the only one conscious." "I will remain alert." Travis looked at him. "You really mean that?" "I do. There was something final in the way he said it, not defensive or proud, just certain. Travis nodded. Then I think we're good. I agree. They walked together down the corridor, the floor panels lighting subtly beneath each step. At the junction, Travis stopped. I've been cleared for lab access again, he said. You up for a joint assignment next week? Vellin raised one brow ridge. You are suggesting partnership? Yeah, I figure we've already seen each other at our worst. Might as well see if we can actually work together without incident. I accept, Vellin said, on one condition. What's that? No open containers. Travis laughed full and clear. Deal? They nodded to each other and parted at the junction, Travis heading toward the dorms, Vellin toward the east wing lifts. Neither looked back. The incident was over. The wound had closed, the data had been logged, and both participants had come away changed, not in grand cosmic ways, but in the kind that mattered when the next unpredictable thing inevitably happened. And in an academy full of unknowns, that was more than enough.